raged after I heard this. Like, I have no idea what they were talking about. And a caller called in and mentioned casually, unchallenged by the host, that Canada didn't have a history of enslavement, just taken as a given. But there were far more years of enslavement in these lands than there has been of Black freedom. It takes some planning and some intention to erase that kind of history. Enslavement of these lands predates the idea of something called Canada. Even the money used to build these lands and its colonial strongholds were generated off of the profits of enslavement. And you know what? The Underground Railroad actually moved in two directions. Black people escaping the enslavement laws of the United States escaped into Canada, yes. And Black people escaping the enslavement laws of Canada escaped into the United States. Why don't we understand history in that way? Shouldn't that be common knowledge? Even our education is colonized. What we are expected to learn and what histories and knowledges are kept from us. Let's take a look at another contemporary example. What's recently transpired in Haiti. Don't be naive and accept that a hurricane alone is responsible for a humanitarian disaster resulting in over 1,000 deaths. Haiti is the first Black republic. The first land where a slave revolt resulted in the retreat of a colonizing white supremacist state. The retreat whole scale from a landmass. After Haiti freed itself, the colonizer returned with the military force it knew could destroy the new state and demanded exorbitant amounts of payment to cover the loss of property. And by property, I mean enslaved people and wealth. And by wealth, I mean slave labor and raw materials. This left the state in a debilitating debt that continues until this day and has created a situation where an island landmass that frequently is subjected to hurricane weather is unable to implement the infrastructure necessary to prevent this massive loss of life. And Canadians are implicated in that. When a popular political figure was elected and demanded the disgusting debt be eliminated and reparations be paid, France, the United States, and Canada implemented a coup. This is anti-Blackness. This is colonization. This is the continuation of genocide. This is a responsibility for those 1,000 deaths. Canadians. And it doesn't end there. How about the people who pick the fruits and vegetables that you eat? Most likely working on the plantations of Southern Ontario. Imported labor through the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. Ineligible for minimum wage and basic rights. This program was literally created to make up for the labor shortage created after the end of enslavement. And it relies on importing mainly Black men from the Caribbean and South America as labor. How about the continued colonization of African lands and the terrorization of people by mining companies? The resulting civil strife caused by such colonizing acts forces the movement of Black bodies all over the world and provides us with little choice but to work in service of such corporations or states elsewhere. And of course, there's policing and incarceration. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a second. My point in mentioning all this is to discuss with you how anti-Blackness is decolonization, but also to show you how Canada and Canadians are implicated in anti-Blackness. As a chapter of the Black Lives Matter movement outside of America, we are often asked to justify our existence because people are insistent that the weather is not the weather. Blackness isn't real here. That this is a multicultural utopia. That racism just does not exist here. That's a domain for the United States. But don't get it twisted. Anti-Blackness is a worldwide phenomenon as much as white supremacy is. Anti-Blackness and anti-indigeneity everywhere except Europe, of course. European indigeneity is fine. European indigeneity is fine. It's the logic that white supremacy is built on, and it's worldwide. So policing and incarceration. I'm going to be clear and perhaps a little provocative to some of you, though I look into the audience, I hope not provocative, about where I stand on this. The ways in which policing and incarceration affect Black and Indigenous communities is not by accident. It's by design. It's the contemporary way in which our bodies are patrolled, controlled, and interrupted worldwide. It's for this reason that I am an abolitionist of both prisons and policing. And to really understand this position, it's important to understand the history of the police altogether. The history of the police in these lands was to protect the property of the wealthy. And by property, again, I mean enslaved people. The police were literally a slave patrol force. You can trace a history of police officers asking for freedom papers of Black people historically to carding today. That is asking for papers. What are you doing here? Do you belong here? Who are you? Prove you belong here. It's apartheid. You can compare it to stop and frisk, to random traffic stops. It doesn't matter where you are. That's where that legacy comes from. And you can't fix a system that's working the way that it was always intended to. We need to radically rethink what safety and security means in our society. Yes. How many of you have heard of the name Mark Soical? Raise your hand if you have. Yes. Okay. I think there was less than 10 hands that rose. I'm going to tell you about who this person is. This is a rough story. Mark was a 22-year-old man who lived in public housing in Mississauga and was killed by the police. You haven't heard Black Lives Matter Toronto uplift this story in the media because we have an accountability process in which we do not elevate particular stories unless we have consent and involvement from affected families. We don't want to participate in re-traumatizing people through our work. And we haven't been able to contact his only family, his mother, for reasons that will become obvious once I tell the story. So, Brother Mark lived with his mother. In March of 2015, a neighbor called in a noise complaint to police. The police officers came to Mark's door. Mark answered the door with no shirt or shoes on. The police ended up arresting him. His mother attempted to free her son from the police by hitting police officers with a pot. Mark ran away as the police officers then tackled and arrested his mother. Mark then returned, yelling at the police officers to leave his mother alone, his hands in the air, no shirt, no shoes. Police officers shot at him 19 times. 11 bullets hit his body, three hit other police officers, one hit a neighbor cutting fruit in her kitchen. He died that night, and his mother remains in jail and had yet to have a trial. And and you haven't heard that story. Think about all the stories you haven't heard about. I was at a talk recently where someone suggested to me that we needed to rethink policing. The idea how we do policing in this country, in worldwide, I don't know what she was suggesting. She just was suggesting that policing needed to be redone. And I suggested, as I said earlier, that we just really need to rethink safety and security. Because in what world does it make sense that somebody calls to report a noise complaint and people show up with the power to kill you 19 times over, and your neighbors too? That doesn't make sense. It will never make sense. There are services that in this city we desperately need. Services to support people who are going through crisis. But all we have is to call the police. And those are the people who are more often than not subject to violence. And I want to talk also about stories we almost never hear about. Because the Special Investigations Unit, its number one cause or tasks that they deal with, there are two things. One is shooting deaths, the other is sexual assault. And we don't know anything about those stories, nothing. But I have a sneaky suspicion about who is being most affected in those cases. What we do at Black Lives Matter isn't new. We're part of a long history of resistance that began the moment that the first Black person was taken through the door of no return. But what we have done here locally that is a bit of a shift is taking conversations that folks have been organizing around for decades and mobilize them to make them very, very public conversations. We've made it impossible for people to ignore these issues. And you're all implicated in it. And you have to make a decision about how you're going to engage with these truths now that you know about them.